Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to the first of a series of webinars focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the aerospace community and workforce. Today's conversation will be focused on institutional transformations that specifically address challenges and provide opportunities for African Americans. This session has been developed through a partnership between the Aerospace Special Interest Group of the National Society of Black Engineers and the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics as a feature of the ASCENDxWebinar series. ASCEND is AIAA's newest conference, and it strives to accelerate the exploration and development of outer space by aligning the global community around a shared vision of the future, a vision that holds the fundamental tenets of diversity, equity, and inclusion at its core. Our speakers today, representing government, academia, and industry, will demonstrate how the space community can support these values by providing examples of successful initiatives at various stages of the workforce development pipeline, and by directing attention toward available resources for enacting institutional transformations. Before we get started, if you should experience any technical issues during today's webinar, please use the chat feature to send a private message to the ASCEND staff. And if you would like to ask a question, please enter it directly into the Q&A form provided by Zoom. We'd like to offer a special thanks at this time to the founding sponsor of ASCEND, Lockheed Martin. And now I'm pleased to welcome Jandria Alexander, Principal at Booz Allen Hamilton and the Chair of AIAA's Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, who will provide opening remarks.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Jandria Alexander from Booz Allen Hamilton, and I serve as the chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. Welcome, as Nathan said, to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Aerospace Engineering Community and Workforce webinar. It is the first in a two-part series. This webinar is extremely timely as we embrace the urgency to address the topic of Black Lives Matter. I have been in the aerospace community for over 20 years and see this time as an opportunity to make significant and lasting change. Since 1963, members from a single professional society have achieved virtually every milestone in modern American flight. That society is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, with nearly 30,000 individual members from 91 countries and 95 corporate members. AIAA is the world's largest technical society dedicated to the global aerospace profession. AIAA must take an active role in attracting and retaining a diverse membership, in raising awareness and educating the community about diversity and inclusion. We must provide diverse leadership and role models to establish a positive mentoring and nurturing environment. AIAA created the Diversity Working Group to encourage participation and collaboration across all genders, ethnicities, races, and to enhance our representation of the entire industry. In order to meet the challenges of the 21st century, we must continuously strive for a diverse workforce. To do this successfully, it is necessary to promote an environment that values individual respect, dignity, and professional growth. Aerospace problems are complex and becoming increasingly so. We all know the power and the impact of a solution derived from a group of people with different identities, strengths, backgrounds, and ideas. There are many programs targeted at increasing diverse engagement in the STEM fields, but the efforts cannot stop at engagement. Efforts directed at the support and retention of new entrants to the workforce are also important to build and maintain a sustainable industry for the future. In addition, efforts to increase diversity in the workforce must be accompanied by an increasing awareness and support of culture of inclusion. Our ability to attract, develop, and retain a quality, diverse workforce is the key to the aerospace industry's continuing success. AIAA, as mentioned by Nathan, has partnered with the National Society of Black Engineers to develop this webinar. AIAA has taken a few specific initiatives that are championing profiles and activities that absolutely align with NSBE. One is the Diversity Scholars Program. In the past 2 years, AIAA has hosted 159 diversity scholars from underrepresented backgrounds and universities to attend AIAA forums so they can learn firsthand how exciting aerospace can be. I encourage you to collaborate with the AIAA Diversity and Inclusion Working Group to improve the overall success of the industry. During today's webinar, we have several goals that we've outlined. 1, increase the awareness of current statistics and the need for improvement. provide examples of successful initiatives at various stages of the aerospace workforce pipeline, direct individuals toward resources for initiating change within their own institutions, challenge organizations to internalize the current political energy by enacting permanent policy change, and elevate Black voices from within the aerospace community. We have an amazing panel for you today, and I'd like to introduce the moderator, Anange Fali, Director of the Aerospace Special Interest Group for the National Society of Black Engineers. Anange, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. As the leader of the Aerospace Special Interest Group, or Aerospace SIG, I'm extremely excited to engage in this dialogue today. The Aerospace Special Interest Group has almost a 17-year history of driving aerospace-specific technical advancement and discovery with our members and collaborators by providing strategic opportunities to really learn throughout their lifetime. Facilitating opportunities that set up, strengthen, and stretch individuals' ability to contribute in positively shifting the technical trajectory of our industry is a personal passion of mine, and one that the Aerospace SIG intentionally focuses on through research, development, outreach, and advocacy initiatives in our divisions throughout the SIG. As the Aerospace SIG strongly believes experiential learning, mentoring, and community is essential to helping make inroads. Today, we have a dynamic panel that will highlight where individuals will highlight how their organizations are setting up, strengthening, and stretching individuals, specifically African Americans, to enter and excel in our industry from both a technical and leadership vantage point. Each panelist brings a unique perspective and best practices that they will individually introduce in their opening remarks. As questions arise, please enter them in the Q&A form for the Q&A portion of this dialogue. First, I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Dexter Johnson, a NASA Technical Fellow for Loads and Dynamics with NASA Engineering and Safety Center located in Ohio. As a technical fellow, Dr. Johnson is a representative of NASA's senior technical experts that provide agency leadership and mentorship across different technical discipline teams. Dexter will share his thoughts and organizational best practices on workplace development, starting with our youth. Secondly, we have Dr. Alec Gilmore, the Dean of Engineering at the University of Michigan. Dr. Gilmore is a rocket scientist and a leader in the field of advanced electric propulsion. Alec will share best practices for capturing and nurturing college students to enter industry. Lastly, we have Mr. Scott Trapp, the Corporate Director of Diversity Outreach for Lockheed Martin Corporation. Mr. Trapp leads the corporation's corporate diversity and inclusion outreach strategies and strategic partnerships with diversity events and organizations to really drive diversity and inclusion within his organization and the overall aerospace community. Scott will share his thoughts on harnessing and really nurturing the growth of individuals in the workplace. First, we're going to start off. Dexter, would you mind telling us about specific challenges faced by African American youth and what types of programs and initiatives are best suited to address those challenges?
Sure, Nanga. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be able to be on this distinguished panel and talking about a topic that I have a real passion for and a heart for. And I'm hoping to be able to just share a few experiences, insights, and other things that might be able to help when it comes to providing solutions in this area. Let me just mention that I'm actually here primarily representing NASA, but I have in all the various partners that are working here today involvement from a standpoint. I have been a long time NSBE or National Society of Black Engineers member for decades. I was involved with starting the chapter, student chapter at my university, the State University of New York at Buffalo. I have also been a long time member of AIAA for decades, and I currently hold leadership roles with AIAA as a chair of the Structural Dynamics Technical Committee. And certainly I've been with NASA now for about 30 years. And prior to me actually becoming a formal NASA employee, I actually benefited from some programs that NASA had to try to encourage minority participation in our field. And that was through the NASA Graduate Student Researchers Program as a graduate fellow. So 3 years of my graduate work was funded by them. And so I've been associated with NASA for over 33 years. So, there is definitely a great need to be able to enhance the pipeline of folks and underrepresented groups coming into the aerospace field. And it really starts with youth development and the K through 12 section of the pipeline. And over the years, NASA has had a concerted effort to, one, bring awareness. Sometimes youth in those early ages are just not aware of the options that they may have before them. Obviously, the first order awareness comes from people in their family, people in their community, things they may see now, or even then, way back then, but on TV or media. And so those gives glimpse of, what it means to be an astronaut, what it means to be a fighter pilot, what it means to, build capabilities within our aerospace industry. And so there's been probably a good, effort in terms of awareness, but in terms of actually seeing the fruit, substantial fruit, in terms of on the back end of folks choosing to go along this path and staying with it for 30, 40 years. That's where, it's been a challenge. So NASA has a vision, basically it's called the NASA STEM Engagement Strategy. And the vision is that we immerse students in NASA's work and you try to enhance STEM literacy and inspire the next generation to explore. So I mentioned awareness, but then what NASA's trying to do is get the students involved and making them a part of NASA's mission. And so as we do that, we're able to let them actually work on activities that we're working on day to day in terms of our primary missions. And can go into some of those details a little bit later. But so the overall mission is to engage students in NASA's mission. So when they're able to actually take ownership, contribute, see that the things that they can be involved with, that they too can be engineer and aerospace engineer. When I have over the years gone out into elementary schools and talked with young people about what an aerospace engineer do, or engineering in general, I say there's someone who uses knowledge, particularly scientific knowledge, to create something. And so specifically the creation part in our case is, aerospace vehicles, aerospace capabilities, and so forth. So at a high level, that's NASA's vision and mission. And it's kind of transformed over the years. There's this whole primary focus on education, but now it's about engagement. And so there's 3 focus areas that we have. One is to create unique opportunities for students to contribute to NASA's work in exploration and discovery, to build a diverse future STEM workforce by engaging students in authentic learning experiences with NASA's people, content, and facilities, and then to strengthen the understanding of STEM by enabling powerful connections to NASA's mission and work. And so from a government perspective and NASA agency perspective, that's how we're doing it. We have a long history of doing that. And I'm glad to be able to have contributed over the years and still helping to do that.
Thank you. So, Alex, Scott, What do you guys, what comments do you guys have along those lines when it really comes to supporting our youth? What are some things that your organizations do?
Sure, I can go. This is Scott. I'm so happy to be here this afternoon and this morning, depending upon where you're from. Some of the things that Lockheed Martin does is to really invest in our early career STEM pipeline, especially when it comes to the diversity space, because we know that access is extremely important. Access is vital in order for the future generation to even know that the possibilities of what they can do. So one of the programs that we invest in comes directly from NSBE, and it's a great program. And if you're not familiar with it, please seek out to go get some more information. One is NSBE Junior. Our NSBE Junior programs across Lockheed Martin is one way that we can really give back to our youth. We line them up with mentors in some of the areas. We work very closely with our Lockheed Martin NSBE chapter. They are really active participants, ensuring that they are going back out to the schools and back out to their certain venues of where we have connections. Also, Lockheed Martin, we invest heavily in the summer engagement program for kids, the SIG summer program. That really targets 3rd through 8th graders and really enforcing the principles of engineering, science, technology, and math. We think that we know that it's important for us to reach our youth early in their career. The same access is not there everywhere. And one thing that we found is that if you don't even have a formal program within your organization and you have employees that are just interested in giving back, go connect with the local school. We know that at Lockheed Martin, our BRGs and our employee resource groups really want to give back, and they give back on their own time by coordinating with different schools that we've built relationships over the years, even outside of our NSBE and SIG programs. So these are just two quick ways that we can make a difference in the next critical pipeline in the future. Also, I just want to add that adding reading literacy is vital in the early ages to make sure that they understand and can comprehend. This is just a basic admission that we all take for granted. But I think we really have to reinforce that in our nation, especially in some of the outlying areas that might not have the adequate or the financial support to get the STEM needs that our kids need.
Thank you, Scott. Alex, as you look at your role in the university, what are some of the different programs and initiatives that you've been a part of to support our youth?
Sure. Let me first of all thank you for hosting us here, and a shout out to the panelists and you as the moderator. This is really a great event. I would say that the way we think about talent development, a few steps. The notion of the importance of exposure and the importance of role models is critically important. The other element is partnership and engagement. So we do quite a bit of partnerships with universities as well as organizations like NSBE and SHIP and SWE and companies, as a matter of fact, like Lockheed Martin, et cetera. No one entity, no one organization is obviously going to be able to address the needs, so partnerships are critically important. I think it's also critically important, though, to be really cognizant of what the needs are and understanding where people are and meeting them where they are versus where you think they are. So being adroit at addressing the community. So, for example, on the K12 realm, we have the Michigan Engineering Zone, which is in downtown Detroit. We have about 300 students in the FIRST Robotics realm. And we do this not only to recruit engineers to the Michigan Engineering College, but actually to, frankly, to let them know, and as important, let their guardians and their parents know that they can be on a trajectory where they can go to college, where they can go and become engineers and scientists or physicians or attorneys or teachers, whatever. And we do this by having our own students, our own undergraduates, our own, if you will, success stories be part of the enterprise in terms of being role models and mentoring and so on and so forth. I could go on later on about the college and so on and so forth as well, but college students, what we're doing with graduate students, but we're a SMASH school. And a lot of what we're trying to do is really just show students and show guardians that they can do it. and because we're in a society where you hear you can't do it, and frankly, our job is saying absolutely you can do it, and we're proof that you can do it.
Thank you. And seeing what you do with the University of Michigan and really getting out there and supporting the youth, for those students that do decide to come to your organization to pursue a degree in engineering and eventually work in the aerospace industry. So you've done the work to meet them where they are. What do you do, and what do you recommend doing once they're in the university to really position them to graduate?
Yeah. So going on this theme of meeting where they are, opportunity is not as widely distributed as talent. And so we recognize that. So we have incredible talent, but they may or may not have had the opportunity to actually develop that talent. So we have to meet them where they are. So let me start. There's sort of, I'd say, 4 themes that I like to talk about. One is, again, partnership. The other is enrichment activities. Another one is leadership from the top. And then finally, the notion of educating our own community. So if I give you some examples in terms of what we're doing in the undergraduate realm, one, we're doing a lot of work with NSBE and SHIP and SWE, for example. And in fact, we have a major presence at all those conferences, in part to show the commitment that we have, not only at the University of Michigan, but frankly, Michigan Engineering. We think it's critically important to be seen and actually have a lot of our faculty members, our graduate students, et cetera, be seen as well. We also have a very strong partnership with our Atlanta University Center. Specifically, we have partnerships with Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta University. And what we do is we have a program where we have about 8 to 10 or so students come after they spend about 2 years at one of those institutions and finish out their degree in 3 years or so, and they get a double or bachelor's in science from their original institutions plus a bachelor's of engineering. And I have to tell you, what's been amazing is not only the incredible, I believe, amount of great enrichment we have of those students in partnership with those original institutions or home institutions, but the role models they play for our own African-American students who came and started right from Michigan Engineering. There's something about starting off at an HBCU that gives you a different kind of veneer, if you will, and it's really wonderful to see this happen. A program that we are not shameless about replicating is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County Meyerhoff Scholars Program, which has really been an exemplar in terms of meeting people where they are and actually allowing them to have their talent shine. And so we've created that through our MSTEM academies. Since 2008, we've had now 700 students, about a third of whom are African Americans, come in through this program. It's a major investment, and we engage in things like coaching, cohort building, et cetera. And what I have to tell you is that there is no distinction whatsoever between the academic achievements of that group and the academic achievements in our student body writ large. So again, talent is uniform, opportunity is not. And at the graduate level, what I'll talk about is the notion that we saw that funding was critically important. So I want to very briefly talk about 2 funding programs that we have that have made a difference. One is that we decided to have a fully funded PhD program at Michigan Engineering about 4 or 5 years ago. What does that mean? That means for about 1,750 PhD students, they're guaranteed 5 years of stipend, financial aid, and tuition. So we did that in part to remove financial considerations off the table. If you apply and you're admitted, you don't have to worry about funding, you're in. And that made a huge difference in terms of our ability to recruit African-American students in particular. We also do considerable partnering, of course, with NSBE, SHIP, et cetera, that I mentioned. But we also partner with a number of other institutions, things like a name exchange program, where we go to these partner institutions, majority and minority serving institutions, and say, if you share us student contact information who have these attributes, we'll do the same as well. And let me just end very briefly this segment with 2 more things about the notion of leadership or pull from the top and education. It takes leadership, it takes constant pressure to make sure we do the right things. That's just the reality of where we are. And so to say otherwise, I'd be disingenuous. So it takes leadership, and we exert that leadership as much as possible. But what we're doing also is we're educating our community, especially our faculty, but also our students as well as our staff, on the importance of diversity, the importance of why are we doing these things, and why it's important to have exemplary engineers, or people who can actually utilize the talent that comes in various forms, shapes, hues, etc. So it's critical to our mission to do that.
Okay. I want to pull on the thread briefly in terms of meeting people where they are from a graduate's and an undergraduate's perspective. Dexter, when you look at the circles to which you are in at NASA as well, what do you see we're doing to meet people where they are to really support graduate and undergraduate success entry into the industry?
Yes, a lot of it involves the formal partnerships in reaching to the students where they are and so forth. I actually can give a little bit of just experiential sort of bridging between the K through 12 and then the undergrad. So like for myself, actually, I would not be in this particular field, aerospace, a doctorate in aerospace engineer, wasn't for a university in my hometown deciding to create a program for high school students to introduce them to the field of engineering. So I was in a program that was linked to a program many of you may be familiar with called Upward Bound or Talent Search. But connected with that, they created what eventually became the Buffalo Area Engineering Awareness for minorities in Buffalo, New York. And that was in the early 80s. And so they took about 20 of us throughout the city and allowed us to, as juniors, to take some introductory engineering classes. So that was meeting us right where we're at. They went into our community, connected with us, say, hey, we're going to expose you and give you the tools and experiences to see if this might be something you want to pursue. For me, it was like a light bulb. I mean, I was struck by lightning when we did a survey of the different engineering fields. We went through mechanical engineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering, and so forth. But when it got to aerospace engineering, it just hit me. And I was like, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. And the rest is basically history. So, I mean, I ended up deciding at that point to go into aerospace engineering, ended up staying at the University at Buffalo, a part of the SUNY system. And so I wish there were, more that would have went, along that path. But as we're going through the pipeline, we'll see that it becomes actually more challenging to basically have the retention part and so forth. So I think from a NASA perspective, there's been a number of different opportunities through fellowships, grants, internships, co-ops, shadowing programs in all different flavors. Those are all basic parts of the Office of and Program of STEM engagement. So on the university side, I was involved in two other aspects that are kind of bridged going into the graduate and undergraduate program that NASA has been a great advocate for. So I mentioned earlier that I had a graduate student researchers program fellowship that enabled me to realize, hey, I can go further than just my bachelor's, and I got a graduate degree. And we need to be encouraging folks in our community to go further, even once they've gotten into the field as undergrads, but to go further as far as they can go. I would not have been a doctor if it wasn't for that program, because I really didn't have going to grad school on my radar. But a professor saw that I actually did well in his class, and he said, I know someone who's looking for students with this minority focus for this NASA Graduate Student Research Program Fellowship. Maybe you can talk to him. And after talking to him, he convinced me that, hey, I should go to graduate school instead of working. And then as a NASA employee, another aspect of helping NASA helping our universities, there was a program called the NASA Administrators Fellowship Program. So I'm actually wearing my T-shirt from that program right now. And so there was a concerted effort that was designed to allow NASA personnel to go to HBCUs and other minority serving institutions to actually spend a year or two helping to make them responsive to NASA's initiatives. But directly, we got to work with the students. So I went to Florida A&M, Florida State University from 1998 to 99. And I taught there. I was on loan from NASA. But then there was another part of that. So NASA allowed professors from HBCUs to come to NASA and do work and so forth. And so as part of that, I actually, for about 10 years, was overseeing a grant with Florida A&M University to try to get minority masters and PhDs in engineering. And so we have some fruit from that we're really glad about. And so over time, things have evolved. So there's some other particular focus things, but those are instances where we actually touch and went to the community and be able to actually have impact instead of just, inviting them to come to our facilities. So maybe I've gone on a little bit too long, but I thought those three experiences might be helpful.
Well, there's a theme that, you highlighted, meeting them where they are, and then leadership. And so your story about your professor really reaching out and saying, hey, I see potential. And so that having going beyond, an extra step beyond, and really looking at how you're building relationships. And that leads me to really ask you, Scott, within your organization and the circles that you work in, what is leadership stance when it comes to really, taking people that come into the workplace and really facilitating an infrastructure that helps them grow?
Great.
And how do you attract them?
Sure. Thank you for that question. I'm just going to take a broad scope on answering this question, so that I'm just going to say to all industry partners and those in the aerospace community that we must have an intentional long and short-term range strategy that is definitely committed to mentoring young underrepresented minorities pursuing careers in STEM from start to finish. I think gone are the days where we think that simply having a diversity strategy focused solely on recruiting minorities is a home run. That is not the case. We have to think about, after you get there, what is your plan to keep them, right? And I think that's what the conversation is really about. So the full cycle strategy must be done for several reasons. And I think first, young people of color who aspire to a career in STEM must be provided with the knowledge, skills, and resources and the connections, because they will get discouraged along the way. And I think, Dexter, your personal experience, what you just told us, was really meaningful and critical. Mentoring is critical. I think, secondly, when they see others that look like them, just not entry level, they start to believe that if others who look like me can do it, I can do it too. And they will remember to pay that forward and also to reach their goal ultimately. And third is important to companies must not simply build a strategy to attract the underrepresented talent. The goal must be more far reaching than that. If the goal does not have elements that answers the question, after we attract this talent, how do we move the talent through the organization? Because there will be a bottleneck and they will start talking. So what I'm saying is, do not make the mistake of building a powerful recruiting mechanism that attracts talent, but does not give them a path forward once they arrive. And additionally, I think there has to be a shift in the mindset that you're going to get the best and the brightest talent from the MSIs without having to invest. The programs that are most successful are those that see the potential and the talent, and it's undergraduates early in the student's career. Investing in those types of programs, strengthening the curriculum, the faculty, even lab equipment helps both parties involved. And also, we heard a little bit about the exchange program, which Lockheed Martin is a part of as well. So at Lockheed Martin, we can ask for the best and the brightest because we help build the best and the brightest early in their career, even before they graduate. And I think that is key. And also having senior members of your organization to share their story through that mentorship platform. And many companies do it differently. But I think that's the beginning, and showing them that they have a community inside of their organization that they can be a part of, and that their work is meaningful, and that their voices are heard.
Okay. You said two things that I wanted to capitalize on, an intentional long-term and short-term plan. And I think that is really, really informative, is, having that long-term strategy. Even within the Aerospace SIG, we talk about supporting people throughout their lifetime, from K up until retirement. How do you want to impact the industry? What tools are we giving them? So in our Q&A, one of the things that came up is that there's a lot of people that are interested in the aviation, the aerospace industry. And in certain communities, inner city communities, where there is underprivileged and disadvantaged youth, how can we, what access to tools do they have to give those people access to, learning about aviation, learning about aerospace? I know some of you mentioned a couple of programs, but are there any specific capital funding venues that your organizations have? And I'll start off
I think
with,
at Lockheed Martin, I can speak.
Mhm.
I can just say very quickly, the summer bridge programs that companies offer, universities offer, those summer bridge programs where they reach back into their pipeline. I think that is one great investment way that industry can partake in order to get the word out about what's the possibilities in aerospace. At Lockheed Martin, we do that in some of the grants that we give to our partner universities, because we know that we have to build that bridge to the future. So investing in those tools and types of programs can be meaningful and very rewarding.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want me to say something?
This is going back to meeting people where they. Oh yeah, go ahead. Most definitely.
Sorry, I was going to say one example that we have is our DAPSET program, Detroit Area Pre-College Engineering Program, and we have essentially elementary school kids who actually come to the campus from Detroit areas to Ann Arbor, and we have them in almost every undergraduate engineering discipline. And what we have is we have our own students, or undergraduates and graduate students, doing workshops with the students and exposing them, just like we heard the story from Dexter, exposing them to the different areas of engineering and seeing which one sticks. And that's a very powerful one. I'd say very briefly, I'm not aware of a single engineering college or school that does not have a pretty robust outreach program, especially those in the cities who work locally. I guess what happens, though, is that they're a bit siloed. And so maybe an opportunity that we're missing is, how do we do a better job coordinating all the activities that are going on? We have 350 or so, 400 engineering colleges and schools, and if even a fraction of them engaged in meaningful K12 outreach in a coordinated manner, it can make a huge difference.
This is along the lines of really meeting people where they are as well. I know a lot of each of you spoke about going out into the communities and really providing opportunities to tell people about aerospace. In terms of really attracting individuals, what is one thing that you would recommend that as aerospace professionals we can do in our communities to really meet people where they are?
Nega, I can indicate that certainly things that are going on in our current events, or particularly in pop culture, you can leverage those things. So I would say that in the recent past, the past couple of years, so when Hidden Figures came out, and also when the movie Black Panther came out, there was a lot of interest in the technology that was being used in Black Panther. And certainly Hidden Figures just opened up that, hey, there's been folks in our community contributing all the time, but it just may not have been highlighted or very evident. And so I actually supported a number of community events that focused, and one in particular that focused on bridging and combining Hidden Figures and the Wakanda experience. And the kids were just so excited. I mean, not to mention, obviously, when it comes to NASA, NASA has a certain brand, and we are on the forefront of exploration. That, it brings a lot of attention. But in our community, it was extra special, when we were able to connect and talk about, the movie Black Panther and some of things like that. And so when I went, it was just very responsive, very opening, and so that's just one example. And so that's taking it to the community. That was right in the urban setting, for that particular instance.
In terms of taking it to the community, we know whenever we want change, it's not something that is done by one group, and it's a community effort. So one of the questions that we have here is, how can we partner with other groups, specifically if someone is not African American or Black? What ways? How can they get involved in this journey to get to foster more people of color getting into the aerospace industry?
Well, once again, I'll just share some examples. So I'll share from an AIAA perspective. Our technical committee, the Structural Dynamics Technical Committee, we actually had a concerted effort to do outreach, and actually have had be the pathfinder for AIAA to go out into community. So every conference, at the time it was the Structural Dynamics and Materials Conference, but now it's SciTech Forum. We actually would, once again, go to the schools, go to the universities, go to the high schools, and we specifically would set up activities particularly focused on our discipline of structural dynamics, but with the focus on aerospace. And that was a way that those that might be, since this is an AIAA primarily sponsored event, that is one thing that can be leveraged and used to be able to take advantage of events that we are already doing in terms of forums, but be able to connect with the community that we were at in those instances. We've been doing that for about 10 years, and we actually developed a seat. At the time it was a DVD, but we don't use DVDs as much anymore. But we actually included a lot of information that we would seed and share with students, and we actually won an award basically for that effort. And so that's another example, at least through AIAA, that we were able to welcome people to get involved. And we invited, and we have expanded. So other TCs are now supporting us in being involved. And there's been some other efforts that have been launched AIAA wide. So those are examples. And also just collaboration between other professional societies. So being a member of the Aerospace SIG for NSBE and the leadership there, my job actually is the Aerospace Partnership lead. So I'm actually working with various organizations to try to partner industry, academia, and so forth. So my involvement with the National Technical Association, which is the oldest minority technical professional organization in the United States, founded in 1926. There are some efforts to, bring together a number of different organizations and leverage it. NSBE is now working with AIAA and some other organizations, SWE, SHIP. So we have to all work together, to be able to provide a solution to these challenges. Those are just some examples.
Awesome. Scott, within your organization, oh, thank you, most definitely. And those are prime examples of that collaboration. And I believe one of the things that this question was also getting at is internally within an organization, and maybe Scott, you can speak to this from a Lockheed Martin standpoint, is how are you building that collaboration to inspire and as you're bringing in more people into the organization?
Okay, so if I think I understand your question, you're talking about bridging gaps with other groups And how
Yes,
do we
over race.
merge the
Yes.
two? Okay.
Mhm.
So at Lockheed Martin, I think traditionally, with all organizations within industry, we would go out and seek individuals that look like the group that we were trying to target, right? I think right now, with all of the social unrest, it's so important to have allies. And I think allies now play a key role in organizations. So at Lockheed Martin, like the rest of the organizations represented here, we have business resource groups. And we are now utilizing our business resource groups for business initiatives. And so instead of naming an executive sponsor at a minority serving institution, a person of that color, we want somebody totally opposite, right? Because when they come into the doors of Lockheed, they're going to see a rainbow of colors. So we just don't want them to think as we are courting them along that they're going to see people that look just like them. That's giving them the wrong information. So when they come inside of our doors, they're going to say, what happened to all of this diversity, right? So by introducing allies at key pivotal executive levels, I think should be the change in the mindset that corporations need to take, because it will solve a couple of different challenges that we have. One, it could be developmental for that person serving as an executive champion of an underrepresented community that they don't have any familiarity with. They will be able to not only get that inward learning, but also know about the social conscious of what the rest of America is going through, and being able to blend their voice and help them have that access to the careers and the opportunities that we all want. So I think with that mindset, I think we just need to do a shift when we are picking our executive sponsors of certain communities that we get involved with. Let them be somebody totally different than what that community looks like. Because when they show up, they're going to get attention, number one, and two, it's going to be a learning opportunity, and three, it's going to be sort of representative of the culture that you're inviting everybody to the table.
Mm-hmm. Alec, you mentioned earlier that, when it comes to meeting people where they are to set them up for success in the industry, there's a lot of resources out there. And there's a lot of places that we can go, but, figuring out how to centralize those and organize those different resources can be a bit of a challenge. Given the current state of affairs where many of us are working from home now, how do you foresee opportunities to centralize some of these different resource platforms and tools to really reach underprivileged students and really and have a dynamic online outreach and development platform?
I'm sorry, there's a small hitch at the very end when you're asking.
So I said to have a dynamic outreach platform, given that I know a lot of people are working from home. And as we're working from home, you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of different resources that we tap upon. And my question was, given our current state of things, what is your organization doing, or where do you see we can collaborate more, centralize outreach materials to really foster online mentoring and in resources to help underprivileged students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So one is that we're working with this organization named SMASH, for example, and we were well on our way to have a really great residential experience for our students, and of course that changed. So some of this is actually we're building the boat as we're sailing in many respects. This is a new phenomenon for all of us, and it touches everything. The future of work is here right now, and so we're really having to rethink how we use technology. And to use an overused term, the new normal is going to be different than the old normal, without a doubt. And part of me says, thank goodness, it's about time. And so a big element is it's really important to, in my opinion, to look what the literature says is the best way of using these technologies. I think what happens, if I can be frank, is that a lot of people who are experts in one area assume that matters related to outreach, diversity, et cetera, are things that you can just kind of pick up a little bit as a hobby. And nothing could be farther from the truth. It's a rich area that requires a lot of studying, a lot of knowledge, one area that you can actually make mistakes and do harm in if you're not careful about. And so I don't have a list of websites to point to, only that we are trying to look at the literature. We're working with other institutions, working with government entities like NASA, corporations like Lockheed Martin and Ford, et cetera, and really all trying to figure out how do we navigate this going forward. And also, how does this change the way we think about it in the future? So 5 or 6 years from now, it may make sense not to just have all of our outreach activities be residential. We may have new technologies by then, virtual, augmented reality, and things like that, that allows students to have a very rich experience, and again, literally meeting them where they are to have this kind of experience.
Thank you. Now, I know Lockheed Martin is a global organization, and so is NASA. One of the questions that has arisen is, how are you distributing your programs across your different sites, specifically California? Scott, will you start off?
So yes, I can take a step at that question. So at Lockheed Martin, we have different funding streams. Some come directly from the business units themselves in partnering with those universities where they recruit from. So that's one funding stream. In the Southern California area, we do partner with a few schools there where they do get funding streams from Lockheed Martin. And they are built upon whether it's research or capstone projects at those universities. From my end, from a global diversity and inclusion standpoint, they would be more programmatic, such as those summer bridge programs that I talked about before. In addition to that, it would be curriculum development, would be faculty development, in ways that we can invest in the schools, not just going on campus and recruiting their best and the brightest, but also making an intentional forefront of investment on the front end so that we can see those results on the back end. Because one of the things that we learned at Lockheed Martin early on is that you just can't show up to campus without investing back in the campus. So by serving on advisory boards is critical and key. By assisting in research is critical and key as well. So I don't have those lists of schools on top of my mind, but I know there are several schools in the Southern California area that we do partner with, where we have major hubs.
Awesome.
And from a NASA perspective, many of our programs, they are focused on our various NASA centers. So NASA has 10 centers across the country. And so in California, we have the NASA Ames Research Center, and we have the Armstrong Flight Research Facility, as well as our partner with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So we tend to work through those hubs, but we have a number of programs that are even cross-cutting in states and communities that don't have a NASA center. A NASA center may cover that region, but it doesn't have to be in the center doesn't have to be in that state to be able to support that area.
Okay. So aerospace is global. One of the things we like to say in the Aerospace SIG is that we really look at growing and fostering a global presence when it comes to advancing the technology used in the aerospace industry. To do that sometimes requires really working with different materials, different ideas, research from around the world. One of the questions that has been posed to us is, how do you navigate working with individuals who may have ITAR constraints? How do you still get them to be able to have an impact on the aerospace industry? Where do you recommend they start off? Scott, do you want to take that question and then follow up on that, Alec?
So I probably would not be the best person to answer that question from a technology standpoint, because I am in global diversity and inclusion and more on the domestic side. So if one of the other panelists can take that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. I in my area of research, advanced spacecraft propulsion system, all of our work is ITAR restricted. And so I sort of live that world where none of my PhD students are internationally developing domestic students. But to get to your point, how do we do collaboration nevertheless? What we tend to do is we are able to sort of thread the needle between, so we'll have international conferences and so on and so forth that we all attend and present. And the idea, if it's fundamental enough, that's an area in which we all can share and benefit from. It really, if you look at a technology readiness level, if you will, it's really at the higher TRLs where ITAR really kicks in. But in fact, where you absolutely want to have the free dissemination of information is at the low TRL, as a matter of fact, because there it's much more of a scientific endeavor versus the engineering. The engineering is based, of course, on the scientific foundation, but there is a free exchange of ideas. And I think in general, and we're better at this now than we were, say, 10 years ago, I think what you see through various international conferences and national conferences that AIAA will have, which will bring people from all over the world, where we're able to sort of provide that, where it's pre-competition, it's fundamental, et cetera. We're able to share information in a meaningful way without violating things like EER and ITAR and things of that nature.
Okay. I want to shift to concentrating a little. Okay. You want to say something?
Just real quick. So you mentioned NASA is global. And so we obviously have a couple of major activities that, we work with directly with other countries. So the International Space Station, now it's been orbiting for 20 years. We'll be celebrating 20 years come this fall, but that's an international partnership. And, the idea is that as we go forward in other adventures, such as, the Gateway and Mars, to Moon to Mars and our exploration activities, the idea is to have international cooperation. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't those constraints, just mentioned by Alec about ITAR, EAR, and so forth. And even recently, like Japan, their status now is connected with China, and there's restrictions on China and information. And so now you have to navigate that. And so I thought that was put nicely. But to the greatest extent possible, we try to actually work globally, and that allows folks from anywhere to have some involvement, and particularly the space aspect.
Okay, in terms of navigation, I want to revert back to talking about people in the workplace for a little bit. We know that we had an individual says, I've been engaged in the industry since 1974, and there's some downturns, up and downs. And how do we prepare our new recruits to survive, especially those who get in that mid-career range? Specifically, what are some programs or some mental toughness or whatever it is that we can use to navigate so that they have a lifelong career in the aerospace industry? Scott, you want to tackle that one?
Sure. So I think it's a couple of things. By having strong mentors, number one, when you enter the organization, get involved with an employee resource group or your business resource group to build a community around you is going to be important. And then take advantage of those developmental programs inside of your organization. I know Lockheed Martin has several of those types of programs for new graduates to experience different things before they settle in on their jobs. Now, one, they're highly competitive. But two, I think that it shows the investments that the corporation is going to make in individuals. So again, life is ever changing. I think we just need to have those tough conversations with our new recruits that we can't promise tomorrow, but we can give you a future today, right? Because we know what the landscape looks like, and then help build upon that in the future. And so that we can be listening to their needs and really management really taking a keen ear and investing back into their employees at an early career. So when they get to that mid-level stage, that they'll be set up for success. Again, not all companies are set up like that. I know that Lockheed Martin is, but still we have to take advantage of all of the plethora of individualized developmental programs that exist. And I know many organizations have a lot to offer. So take a look and seek out those first.
Can I add my aspect of things from academia? Actually, the notion of lifelong learning comes to mind, of course, because what you find in many cases is that when you have a displacement of employees from one entity to another, or displacement of one type of engineer, they're replaced by another type of engineer. The automotive sector is a perfect example of that. The race towards smarter cars, autonomous vehicles, they're shifting away from maybe traditional mechanical engineering type systems to more electrical and computer science. So part of it is just a shift in terms of the kind of engineers that are needed. Now, in venues like we're seeing right here in terms of the online space, higher ed actually is both for-profit and non-profit higher ed, I might add, are actually rising to the occasion because we recognize that a huge need and therefore a huge market is this notion of lifelong learning. And there I'm not just talking about getting an online MBA or online MS in engineering. I'm talking about things like MOOCs, and I'm talking about other types of stackable credentials that are coming out. So that if an engineer has been in HVAC for 15 years and she says, I need to learn more about autonomous vehicles, there are myriad ways in which she can get that kind of education short of leaving her job, et cetera, because you can just do it in the comfort of your home.
Amazing. Dexter, do you want to comment on this one as well?
I can. I would say that within NASA, there's been some targeted development programs that span the spectrum of one's career, so early career, mid-career, later career, and so forth. And in my time as a supervisor, I highly advocated my early career employees to get into those programs, or I would nominate them because, as it was stated, sometimes they are very competitive. And I think it has really served them well. I've seen it serve myself well. I've been in a couple of different internal things. And what happened is it takes you kind of out of your sandbox. A lot of times, when you first come in, you get, of course, targeted. You're trying to be the best you can and with the work and things that you're doing. But sometimes you can get really narrow focused and not realize there's a whole world of things that are going on that you could continue to learn and get broader experiences. And so sometimes these programs give you a real shot in the arm and accelerating some of those experiences. And almost all of my employees that have done that, they have now gone to do great things very quickly. And I think that's one of the things that we find today is that a lot of younger and early career folks tend to want to go up fast or move fast. And so in order to maybe satisfy some of that, having these different diverse experiences and so forth can help to moderate that a little bit.
In terms of wanting to move fast, how would you characterize that with the need to respond to that fast movement? How quickly do our development programs need to evolve? Our different opportunities need to evolve so that we're retaining that talent in the aerospace industry?
No, that's a very good question because evolution is important, and so that's why some of these programs they do get refreshed. Sometimes they get repurposed or modified. So I think that's healthy. But it does all speak to the retention, because on the other side is when those opportunities aren't there, or people get frustrated or don't feel that they're satisfied in their job or the progress, then they leave. They move on. Speaking to diversity, one area that I have seen, some challenges is as African American women have come as an engineer into the research and engineering organizations, they tend to sort of off ramp more so than maybe any other group that I've seen. And so part of that might be the culture, it might be the opportunities, it may be, a number of different factors that are both gender and, race-based. But I think, having that kind of renewed look and being to adjust based upon the current pipeline, where we are in the pipeline, people coming in to do that. And so where there may have been a reluctance to maybe give, substantial responsibility, or you have to try to find some medium ground. And it seemed to have worked in a few instances I can think of providing those other sort of side assignments or experiences. They allowed a little bit more of some patience to be exhibited. So I think that's kind of what you were speaking to.
Can I respond very quickly to that too?
Yes.
The aerospace field, while it's never been a monolith, it's actually less monolithic now than it's ever been. So of course you have the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, the NASA, and so on and so forth, and they do things that no other entities can do in the aerospace realm. But you also have new space, for example, just thinking about aerospace and new aeronautics. In other words, the entrepreneurial aspect. And the old adage is, how do you make a small fortune in aerospace? You start with a big one. Well, those days are actually over, in the sense that now you have venture capitalists investing in aerospace, both on aeronautics and astro side of things. And so to answer your question, I think that's a realm that traditionally aerospace engineers, and especially on the educational front, has not really promoted for our students, the notion of entrepreneurship, the ability to work not only in a large corporation, but actually in small startup companies and things of that nature. And frankly, if there's one thing I'd love to see more and more, and this transcends all aspects of engineering and business, is to have more people of color assume leadership roles in entrepreneurship. And aerospace is ripe for that right now.
That's an excellent point. And that leads me to a question for you, Scott. We hear a lot in organizations that we want to harness the entrepreneurial spirit. And so when you look across your organization from a leadership standpoint, how are you pinpointing that person has potential, or really fostering internal entrepreneurial spirit to retain individuals? Are there any programs along those lines?
Lockheed Martin, we have over 100,000 employees, and there's all types of programs that are constantly going on, some classified, some non-classified. But we do have some strong research centers that just is really taking a look at that advanced technology. And of course, for young folks coming straight out of college, getting into those areas is probably the best job that they've ever landed, because they actually get to go play in a playground of the unimaginable. So the realms of possibility, those are very few. So I'm going to revert back to having a strong development plan and letting your leaders know where you want to go within the organization to open up those opportunities is going to be key. And remember, it's a two-way street as far as your development is concerned, right? We have 50% ownership. Hiring managers have 50% ownership. And what are you going to put in your toolkit to get that job that you want? Whether it be an entrepreneurial position inside of your organization, working on some of those top research projects and bringing patents to Lockheed Martin is one keen way. And there is a group within our organization that solely does that, right? So again, you have to determine from a student's perspective, what is it that they want, what is in their plan, and how can we help them get there?
Neat. That leads me to think of one thing. Alec, how do you prepare students to know to ask those questions when they start at an organization? What best practices can you share with the group to really set up the mindset so that they know, all right, the development plan is one of the things that's really key, and I need to have those conversations with my leadership to really drive my career?
Well, what we do, and frankly, one of the best things any college or university can do, is have people like Scott and Dexter come and visit campus and share their stories, but also give their advice. So we do that. We have a lot of engagement with companies and government agencies and coming in and actually sharing that. It's almost like being a parent. You can tell your kids something over and over again, but when somebody else who they respect says it, all of a sudden it sinks in. So it's really great to have exemplars from industry and government come in and say those things. We also have, and this is also very true in many engineering colleges and schools, a top-notch entrepreneurship program. But I want to dispel a myth. A lot of people think entrepreneurship programs are about teaching people how to start a company. Nothing could be farther from the truth. It's really what you were saying about this notion of entrepreneurial mindset, and sometimes people call it intrapreneur, essentially. And what people like Scott and Dexter are talking about are how do you have those employees that have that spark, that ability to just have insight, wisdom, ability to work with people, bring out the very best of people, that hunger, that zest to do something. Those are the people that companies are after. And so our job as educators is to take those students, those diamonds, sometimes in the rough, and make sure that we do what we can so that when we hand them off to industry, government, or hopefully academia for our PhD students as well, that they can actually do us proud by being really some of the top employees out there.
All right. This has been amazing. Today we've heard some great stories, some best practices. You know, from what I would like to say are industry's leading minds on how to set up, strengthen, and stretch our organizations, our leaders, and our communities to really drive an inclusive and impactful aerospace community. I would like to take some time, Dexter, Scott, and Alec, to really give us some final thoughts. Dexter, give us a final thought on how we can best advise people to set up for success. And then Alec, touch on strengthening. And then Scott, close us out with some final thoughts from a stretching standpoint across the aerospace industry.
Well, thank you, Anega. Once again, it's been a pleasure to be a part of this esteemed panel and such a very good topic. And I would just leave this with individuals that first of all, they have to take ownership in a sense that you have the ability to make an impact. One person can make a difference, and you can be able to influence your community and your sphere of influence. There's one saying that I typically share, and it's basically seek, seize, and squeeze. And so it's important that you don't kind of sit back and wait, but you actually seek and go after opportunities and the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge or wisdom or guidance or whatever you need to be able to do that. And so that means having engaging conversations and building relationships. Relationships are the key to everything. But you need to actually open yourself up and be willing to, engage people. Don't be, hesitant in doing so. And then when you have opportunities before you, you have to take advantage of those opportunities. And so, that's where the squeeze, seize part of it is. You just take hold of it. And then once you have the opportunity before you, or you are able to be working with individuals to encourage them to come in this field or stay in this field, you got to squeeze every bit out of it. Many times we get to a place, maybe we're satisfied, maybe you think that there's been enough progress made in this area, but there's always room for improvement. And so we need to squeeze every bit out of the situation. That's what I try to do. And maybe in some instances, I think I maybe do too much. but I encourage people to start there and then leverage with a number of different programs and people like these organizations. So it's been a pleasure. I hopefully this all helped.
Okay, thanks. Also a pleasure to be here as well. I would say use your privilege honorably is important. And what do I mean by that? If you take a job at NASA or Lockheed Martin, or you come to a place like University of Michigan, you belong there as much as anybody else, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You belong there, therefore you utilize the opportunity you have there. You get the mentoring you need, you get the resources, you don't take no for an answer, you find a way of making it happen. But once you get to a point where you're in leadership and you have an opportunity to give back, use your privilege honorably. It's really important. All of us are here in part, large part, because the people who preceded us, the sacrifices people made. And it's been a lot harder for them than it is for us. And hopefully it'll be easier for the people who follow us than it was for us. So it's really important that we never, ever, ever lose sight of the fact that the struggle continues, to be frank, and that we have to give back. And again, use our privilege honorably.
Thank you, and I echo your same sentiments. And I think the key takeaways from this journey is making sure, from an industry standpoint, of being intentional and making sure that you're showing up in a meaningful way. This includes everybody from the C-suite to your recent college graduates. They all play a significant role. We aren't just checking a box at Lockheed. We make sure that we give back to our universities. We support their research, capstone projects, curriculum development, and serve on their advisory boards. This is our admission ticket to attracting their students, and they see us on campus early, and they know us by name, and most importantly, they know that we care. So I think when you take your privilege and going on campus, making sure that you're taking allies with you, making sure that you're sharing the journey with them so that they can go back and amplify all the good work that's being done. And being strategic is also important to whatever the goals and the missions of your organization are. Make sure they're all in alignment, and then it will be a win-win situation. But make sure that you're being very intentional and thoughtful and strategic.
On behalf of the National Society of Black Engineers and AIAA, we thank you again for joining us today. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to Jandria Alexander, Chair of the AIAA Diversity and Inclusion Working Group, to our moderator, Inanga Hawley, Director of the Aerospace Special Interest Group of the National Society of Black Engineers, to our esteemed panelists, and to the founding sponsor of Ascend, Lockheed Martin. This conversation has been the first in a series of webinars focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the aerospace community and workforce. Please join us again next week for part 2, when we will focus on the experiences of women in the aerospace community. For more information about the organizations represented today, or to register for future webinars, please visit the websites listed on screen. The recording of this webinar will be available at ascend.events in the coming days. Thank you again, and have a great afternoon.